This is a delicate matter, but I feel compelled to share this story with you, which happened not long ago to my husband and me. Though it might be considered a paranormal story, it is also a sad and terrible reality in which we live. I will omit our names after sharing this anonymously and will not provide names of places either. That day, my wife and I were out on the road. It was summer vacation, and we had planned a trip through the magical towns in our car. I was very excited because I was looking forward to visiting all those beautiful places, and we both needed a vacation after so much work. Sadly, our happy plan was marred by the following event. We spent almost the entire day in a magical town, but a lady we met at a local restaurant suggested we should visit another smaller town nearby, about an hour's drive away. It was much smaller but unmissable because it was very beautiful and colorful, though not well known by tourists. My husband asked her for directions, and she recommended taking a shortcut that would cut a lot of time off our journey compared to the main road. We left in our car, heading to that small town the lady had recommended. I was very excited about the next adventure, although we had to hurry as the sun was setting, and I wanted to enjoy the colors of that little town while it was still daylight. But it didn't turn out that way. We took the hidden road the lady had recommended. There wasn't a single building around, and since we entered it, we never saw another vehicle. At first, I didn't notice it because I was too excited, but after a while my husband pointed it out to me. He asked, "Don't you find it strange that we haven't seen a single vehicle on this road?" I responded that yes, I hadn't noticed until he mentioned it, but perhaps it was because tourists didn't know about this shortcut, and the little town wasn't well known by tourists either. But it was strange that not even locals passed through there. It was getting dark, almost pitch black, and I started to feel scared and a strange vibe. I just wanted to get to that town. I wasn't excited anymore, but anxious and very nervous about being there alone and it getting completely dark. And here comes the ugliest part of the story and what still shocks me after so much time. Out of nowhere, we didn't know at what moment or from where, a girl came running down that road right in front of us. She looked very poorly dressed with her clothes torn and very desperate, and I noticed that she was crying and very scared. My husband immediately braked to a stop when he saw her. We both looked on, astonished, unable to say a word, and here comes the most terrifying and strange part of all this. In the blink of an eye, the girl was gone. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. Neither my husband nor I could see exactly where she went or the exact moment she disappeared. There was no one else there, no other cars or people. We were the only ones in that place, which by then was completely dark. We looked all around, but the girl was nowhere to be seen. She had simply disappeared right before our eyes. I have always been a very nervous and fearful person, so I started to shake with fear and almost started to cry. I could hardly speak and was just trying to ask my husband in a broken voice what had happened. He held my hand and told me, "Calm down, love, it's over, we're leaving now." But I could see the bewilderment and fear on his face as well. I told him that we should go back, that we should leave that place immediately and return to the highway. So, that's what he did, and the way back seemed eternal to me. We arrived at the next magical town we had on our schedule, where we had reserved a room at a hotel. I didn't even want to go out to explore. I just wanted to be in bed because I was very impressed and scared by what had happened. The next day, my husband convinced me to go out to explore just so I could get over the fright. We spent all day touring that town, and by chance, we met a couple who started chatting with us in a bar. Then my husband brought up what had happened the night before. They were locals, so they asked us exactly where it had happened, and my husband told them. They looked at each other with a look of anguish, and the man very seriously told us, "I don't know who told you to go that way, but please never go back there again. It's a very delicate issue, but we'll tell you about it so that you can be very careful." And that's when they both started to explain that that road was a hidden route used by non-legal trucks carrying girls on board. I know I can't be explicit, but you understand. Of course, these were girls who were being deprived of their freedom for profit. We were stunned to hear this, and the danger we had exposed ourselves to. But although it was doubtful about that girl who asked for help and disappeared in less than a second, they commented that perhaps she was one of those girls who had lost her life trying to escape, and that it was simply her spirit. That was too much for me. It scared me a lot, but more than that, it made me very sad. My husband and I know what we saw was real, and after learning all that, her appearance made some sense to us, although we were never very believers in those things. As they say, you don't believe it until it happens to you. And sadly, it happened to us. I just hope that poor girl finds the light and the peace she is so desperately seeking. I usually never travel by road at night, and even less so alone, as it's not very safe to do so in my country. But on that occasion, it was out of necessity, and while I encountered no crime, something paranormal did happen to me that left me terrified and plagued by nightmares to this day. My name is Jesus Herrera, and I want to share with you what happened to me on a highway in Mexico while I was traveling alone at night. That afternoon, I received a call that my mother had fallen ill. I lived in another city 4 hours away due to my job, so I didn't hesitate to leave as quickly as I could in my car to where my mother was. It was past 8 p.m. and already dark. I was somewhat nervous, not just because of the dangerous roads due to crime. I never imagined that something so terrifying and otherworldly would happen to me. I had been driving for about an hour when I stopped at a gas station to buy coffee, as I didn't want to fall asleep on the road since I was very tired from work. As I left the store, a man suddenly appeared out of nowhere and almost made me spill my coffee. He looked like a vagabond, very poorly dressed and disheveled, and I later saw that he had his belongings and blankets in a corner of the store, which indicated that he was staying there. He suddenly told me, "If you are going that way, be very careful," pointing with his fingers in the direction I was headed. "If you see that boy, do not stop, and do not look him in the eyes. He is not a boy. He is something evil that wants your soul." After saying that, he left. Of course, I didn't take him seriously and felt sorry for the poor man, assuming he was insane. Disregarding his words completely, I got back into my car and continued my journey. I was more than halfway there when I saw a small boy on the side of the road, extremely pale. His skin was very white. He was standing by the roadside raising his little hand, and I'm not sure if he was hitchhiking, but there he was. I immediately remembered what the man at the gas station had said, but it still seemed too strange. I remained skeptical, and of course was not foolish enough to stop, but I slowed down out of curiosity to get a closer look. It was peculiar to see a child alone at that hour on a dangerous highway. As I approached, I noticed his unnaturally pale complexion. I don't know if he thought I would stop to help, but when he saw that I passed without stopping, I saw his face of innocence completely change. His eyes turned dark and angry, and a sinister, challenging smile appeared. It was truly terrifying to see that. I pressed the accelerator, remembering the man's warning not to look him in the eyes. As I drove away, I saw that thing begin to float, moving toward the darkness, completely vanishing into it. I drove non-stop until I reached the city, shaken and bewildered by that strange and malevolent being I had just seen. After all, that man was not so insane. He knew things. He knew who that being disguised as a child was. So, on my way back, I traveled by day and stopped at the gas station to see if I could find him. I wanted to ask him who that supposed child was because I was very curious. But he was nowhere to be found, nor were his belongings where they had been the last time, in the corner outside the store. I asked a gas station employee if they had seen him or knew what time he came to sleep there, but the man told me it had been several days since he last came and nobody had seen him, which was strange because he slept there every night, and the owner let him stay as long as he didn't bother anyone. When I heard that, I had a bad feeling. I just hope that man is all right and that he hasn't fallen into the hands of that thing pretending to be a child. Good evening, community. Today I come to tell you about this event, as strange as it is disturbing, that happened to me when I was traveling back home with my sister after a vacation. We were on the Querétaro highway, and it was very cold at the time. Suddenly we encountered very heavy rain, so intense that I could barely see the road, and it was also very late at night, well past midnight. I was driving slowly to avoid any risks. As I mentioned earlier, visibility was almost nil. My sister was recording the road because she was posting stories on her social media, telling her followers that we were on the highway in such horrible weather at night. Then she said, "All that's missing now is a ghost appearing on the road to complete the creepiness of the situation." It seemed that with her words she had summoned or attracted it, because suddenly she said to me, "Tonio, there's someone standing right there in front." I thought she was just trying to make it more interesting for her followers, as she planned to upload the entire video to her stories after finishing the recording. However, when I focused my eyes, I realized it was real. From what little could be seen, there was a woman dressed in light colors that stood out in the darkness, hitchhiking in the rain. My sister kept recording, but she was no longer paying attention to her cell phone. She was seeing the woman with her own eyes. As we got closer, we could see it was indeed a young woman asking for a ride. My sister told me, "Tonio, stop, let's see what she needs." I replied that she was crazy. I was not going to stop to help a stranger at that hour. However, she lectured me about how the woman was alone and getting soaked in the rain, and what if it were her in that situation with no one to help her. And well, I had no choice but to comply. The woman looked like any normal person, dressed in jeans and a white blouse. My sister rolled down the window and asked if she needed help, to which she seriously replied that she needed to get to the city because her car had gone off the road and she wanted to get home. Without consulting me, of course, my sister told her to get in because we were also going to Mexico City and we could give her a ride. I was extremely nervous and also angry with my sister for doing that so abruptly without asking more questions and without consulting me. But there was nothing to do. The woman had already gotten into the back seat. It should be noted that at no point did we see any car, and there was nothing around in the wilderness. Anyway, I started driving, and the rain gradually stopped. My sister tried to make conversation with the young woman, but she hardly responded to any questions. My sister even offered her phone to call a family member to let them know she was okay, but she declined. Thus, about 20 minutes of complete silence and discomfort passed when suddenly a truck coming from the opposite direction almost hit us as it was overtaking another truck. I swerved the steering wheel and we nearly went off the road, but fortunately it was just a scare. My sister screamed a curse word from the fright and bent down to pick up her phone that had fallen to the floor with the sudden movement of the car. I looked in the rearview mirror to see and ask the girl if she was okay, but she was no longer there. I shouted to my sister, who was still bent over searching for her phone in the dark, that the woman was gone. She immediately got up, turned around, and confirmed that there was no one there. My sister was as surprised as I was. We both literally had goosebumps. We felt so much fear, and yet were amazed at how she had disappeared into thin air. There was no explanation. Despite searching, we simply could not find her. Suddenly, I remembered that my sister had been recording everything with her phone from the moment she saw the woman standing on the highway. So I told her, "Vero, check the video you recorded, quickly." With trembling hands, she grabbed her phone and started checking the video, fast-forwarding to the part where the woman should have been standing on the road. But in the video, there was no one. Even when we stopped to ask if she needed help, only my sister's voice is heard in the video. No one answers her. It was clear that what we had picked up in our car was not a person, but an entity. We arrived home as shocked as we were nervous, telling everything to our parents who, upon showing them the video, seemed not to believe us as the woman did not appear in the video, nor was her voice heard. We never truly knew if they believed us or not, but it is something that my sister and I have not yet gotten over, and both of us know that it was real. and that this woman seemed like a normal person. It is something that will stay with us until the last day of our lives. We think that maybe it was a soul that lost its life in that place where she was standing, and continues to ask for rides to get home. We hope that was it, and not some malevolent being. My name is Rodrigo Salazar, and for some time I've been wanting to share a story that happened to my wife, my teenage son, and myself about a year ago. We were traveling on the Tamal and Pecos roads, heading to a niece's wedding, and it got a bit late along the way since those roads are full of curves, and I had to drive very slowly for safety. Everything was normal. My wife and I were chatting, and my son was in the back playing on his phone. Suddenly, we entered a wide stretch where there are only mountains around. During the day, it looks very beautiful, but at night, you only see the dark silhouette of the massive, imposing mountains, and the road is full of curves. Out of nowhere, my wife said, "I saw something up there, something very big flying above the mountains." I tried to look, but I couldn't do so properly since I couldn't take my eyes off the road. It was too dangerous. Upon hearing his mom, my son immediately stuck his head out the window to get a better look, and the first thing he did was scream in astonishment, asking what that thing was. My wife kept looking at the sky and began to pray the Lord's Prayer. I couldn't see very well. From the little I could make out, it was the silhouette of a very large person flying among the mountains. My son started recording with his phone, but the video showed nothing due to the distance and darkness. Suddenly, my wife, agitated, told my son to close the window. He obeyed his mother but kept peering out, trying to make out what that disturbing thing was. Clearly, it was no bird. My wife continued saying prayers with her eyes closed, and out of nowhere, that thing disappeared among the mountains, but not before leaving behind a red light that lasted a few seconds before vanishing. The three of us were stunned. We were very scared. My son, more than anything, was excited to tell the story to his cousins and friends, but it really affected my wife, and after that, she was serious throughout the journey. Once at my niece's house, she said that what we saw was nothing good, that it was something evil that could have harmed us, as she was from that place and knew many things and stories that the people from her village told. She had never seen anything like that herself until that day, and advised that the best thing to do was to pray incessantly to ward off whatever that malevolent being was. On the way back, we traveled during the day and saw nothing, but that experience will stay in our memories forever. First of all, thank you for letting me share my story. This happened several years ago to my brother-in-law and me, when we were headed to my family's ranch to celebrate his bachelor party. We decided to go a night early to help set everything up before the party the next day. We already had a place to stay, so we settled there for the night. After work, I picked him up, and we hit the road around 8 p.m. The ranch was about 2 hours from the city. It was around 9:30 p.m. when we reached the dirt road leading to the ranch. From there, it was just a half-hour drive to get there. However, we encountered the road blocked off due to the risk of criminal gangs active in the area. Not sure what to do next, I remembered there was another path that, although much longer and rougher, with many rocks requiring us to drive very slowly, we had no choice but to take. We reached this path and I drove slowly along it. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a man appeared with a wheelbarrow heading toward the road and gestured for us to stop. I stopped the car and rolled down the window to see what he needed. All he said was, "Young men, good evening. I advise you to turn back on the highway. You shouldn't be driving here, especially at this hour. There are spirits here that will make you lose control, and you could have a fatal accident." My brother-in-law let out a slight chuckle while I shot him a look to signal him to be quiet. The man simply said, "If you don't believe me, that's okay. I've done my duty in warning you. I hope you make it safely to your destination." After that, he walked away. In a joking manner, my brother-in-law asked what that man might have been on, followed by a bout of mocking laughter. I didn't laugh, as something inside me hesitated, making me for a moment believe the man's serious and respectful warning, although I dismissed my intuition just wanting to get to the ranch house to rest. So, I continued driving along that road. We were nearly at the ranch when we crossed a bridge over a creek. Suddenly, something jerked the steering wheel from my control. I can't quite explain it, but it felt as if the wheel was being forcefully turned by someone else. And no matter how hard I tried to wrestle it back, I couldn't. It was as if someone very strong was manipulating it. We made it off the bridge but ended up crashing into a tree. We were only left with scrapes, but the front of my car was completely smashed. It was an enormous fright. We immediately got out of the car and checked on each other, relieved that aside from the shock and material damage, nothing serious had happened because I was driving slowly. If we had been going fast, it would have been a different story. We called emergency services and our families, who came to assist us, and the party was subsequently canceled. However, what troubled me the most was explaining what had happened, as no one would believe that something had moved the steering wheel and caused us to lose control. Not even my brother-in-law, who initially thought the old man's warning was a joke. So, I didn't tell anyone what really happened, except to my brother-in-law who, after experiencing it, began to believe. A few weeks later, we rescheduled the bachelor party at the same location, but this time my father drove us there using the original road that had been blocked that night. While at the party, my father introduced us to some of his friends who lived near the ranch. Unexpectedly, one of them approached me and said, without any introduction, "The steering wheel moved on its own at the creek, right?" He explained that several people he knew had experienced the same thing, which is why he wanted to ask me. I was taken aback but confirmed it, explaining everything that had happened. He then revealed that about a year prior, a criminal gang in a van had an accident on that very bridge, fell into the creek, and all perished. They had been speeding because they were being chased. Since that incident, this paranormal phenomenon had begun occurring to many people, all reporting that suddenly the steering wheel would move on its own, and they couldn't control it. This incident transformed my view of the world. Before this, I was highly skeptical and didn't believe in anything paranormal, but having experienced it firsthand, I now know such things do happen. That bridge has since been torn down and no vehicle can pass there anymore after the numerous accidents that have occurred. This was undoubtedly an incredible and terrifying experience. Thank you all for listening to these stories. Hope you enjoyed them. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss all the upcoming stories. See you in the next video. Good night.